In honor of having recently been snowed in here in the nation's capital under one of the top 10 blizzards on record, let's put on some hot cocoa and have a look at They, a chilly end-of-the-world picture by B-movie maker extraordinaire Bill Rebane. We open with a few clumsily cut-in frames of some kind of panic in the street that then just suddenly go away. There are, I don't know, what are they, titles? Outer space process shots mixed with music and sound effects, some of which Rebane would recycle for the giant spider invasion the following year. Cut to brother and sister Jake and Sara in a wintry cabin. There's some backstory in the little house on the Prairie tradition. Jake thinks Sara should leave their remote homestead, move into town, and start a family. But Sara has no interest, and you sense this is a conversation they've already had many times before.
You know, once they leave, maybe we ought to fly into Pine Crick. Do some shopping? Go out in the town, kick up our heels a bit. What do you say? Do you a world of good?
I hate towns. You know that.
Then, okay, titles again. Only this time there are actual titles over extended shots of a twin-engine airplane in flight that were surely tough to get on Rebane's budget. It makes sense Sara would detest city life, since she grew up in a cabin so remote Jake and some of his friends have to use this plane to get to the nearest civilization, an airfield adjoining Bear Creek, a woodsy lodge. Another friend, Sam, radios them from the airport to beg them not to land because the area is afflicted by plague. He's hysterical. They touch down anyway and find the place desolate. While they're looking around, another pilot, presumably plague-ridden, crashes. They split up. Jake and Eric go to the crash site. Dan and Andy stumble to Bear Creek Lodge, where they encounter strange radio signals and a haunting red light.
What on earth is that? It's a red light. Where's it coming from? Hey, it's moving.
Having grasped the enormity of the problem, which gives them an advantage over the audience, the quartet flies back to Sara's cabin. They then learn the plague is widespread and is being accompanied by rampant UFO sightings, a fact Rebane, with his limited resources, conveys by having our heroes listen for news updates on the radio. Telling rather than showing is a legal move here, in my opinion, given the project's money limitations. But then Rebane tries to actually recreate some TV broadcasts, which A, is weird because they weren't watching TV, and B, is unforgivable because it really sucks.
All the astronauts that we're sending up there, and those rocket ships and everything, well, I think that they're just getting mad at us. That's what I think.
Jake sends Dan and Sara out to hook an antenna to their ham radio rig, though when they're subsequently seen in the woods, they're hunting, because continuity had the day off. And as he's already done several times, Dan takes advantage of their solitude to make an awkward, lethargic pass at Sara, which she rebuffs. They come back to the cabin, and after a depressing false rescue in which they mistakenly think they've found a signal, only to figure out it's just a loop.
It's the same song. It's playing over.
Why not? Turn on the air.
Well, they normally don't play the same song twice in a row.
They all get cabin fever, and Andy bugs out. Dan goes a little more psycho, and in the process actually figures out more of what's going on. Then suddenly they realize that though they thought Andy had left on the snowmobile, he's actually left on the plane. The aliens make him hallucinate, and he immediately crashes. This ruins Jake's life, and even though the apocalypse is unfolding all around him, he fixates on the airplane since he'd bought it with life insurance money he'd gotten after his father had also died in a similar crash. The loss of the plane strains the rest of the cabin dwellers, and they spend the rest of the movie awaiting the inevitable. This, naturally, is an excuse for the movie to lapse into clumsy biblical allegory. For all its flaws, They has a surprising Old Testament-inspired twist ending Weird enough that for some, it will make the rest of the movie worth seeing. It's probably not a coincidence they came out the same year as UFO Target Earth. The interest in extraterrestrials around this time seems not to have been a mere fad, but instead some kind of mystical obsession, whose intensity we scarcely recall today. Like Target Earth, They is also very shy about revealing the true nature of the alien menace the clan and the wintry cabin faces. The story's set up to keep Armageddon at a distance. Not only does this let Rebane tell a big story on a little budget, but it makes you wonder if the people in the cabin are something extraordinary. In something like the same way the cheerleaders in Night of the Comet or the love triangle in The Quiet Earth seem to be hand-picked by some mysterious all-seeing power to survive these movies' cataclysms. The clan is so remote they catch the interest of the alien intruders, who start answering their radio distress calls and asking nosy questions about them.
Where are you located exactly?
Manitoba, 205 miles northwest of Hightower.
Their isolation makes them good subjects for study, evidently. You sense the aliens are trying to contact them because something is special about them. Perhaps either their ruggedness, love of solitude, or stoicism in the face of physical trial has drawn the attention of the ETs, whose motives are a matter of speculation. The invaders are plainly bent on conquering Earth, but the tone of their radio calls gives the impression that we're a subject of interest, too, a culture under glass, as well as an enemy to be enslaved. Rebane has a notorious reputation as an inept filmmaker. Two of his works, Monster A-Go-Go and The Giant Spider Invasion, were turned into MSD3K episodes. But in my opinion, he's not inept so much as he's in the wrong line of work. You sense in his more serious movies the drive of a thwarted playwright. Most of They, as well as the Alpha Incident, involves isolated characters on verisimilitudes of theater stages, absorbed in hyperdramatic exchanges of dialogue. Conversely, Rebane's work is clumsiest when he tries to convey stories that are broader in scope. Just about every time They tries to get outside the cabin our heroes are holed up in, the results are disastrous. The special effects are crap, the soundtrack's repetitive and out of sync with the movie's mood, the editing's choppy and incoherent. But when the camera settles down and lets the actors perform, They actually isn't terribly bad. On the one hand, this dates horrendously, since we've come to expect movies about grand-scale conflict to be visually grand as well, owing to the sound and fury spectacles of modern corporate mainstream Hollywood. But if you give the movie a little benefit of the doubt, which you can count on people not to do, it's got a score of less than 2 out of 10 on IMDb, you might find some writerly ambition trying to get out. The movie's intimacy makes the gloom of doomsday seem immediate and simultaneously remote. Jake, Sara, and the clan spend ages trying to figure out what's happening to them, and they never quite get to the bottom of it. The only one who seems to have a clue is Dan, the movie's insightful and weary visionary, and the only reason why is that he seems to be crazy.
Oh, Jake. Friends with all the furry little forest creatures.
Dan regales Jake with stories about the aliens that borrow heavily from Velikovsky. Worlds in Collision and Velikovskyism had made a huge comeback in the 1970s, as well as conspiracy theories of whatever other type. As Dan deduces the true nature of the invaders who've brought human civilization to an end, the rest of the cabin dwellers try to figure out what to do with lives they now know are over. And after all, if we set aside the eye-candy spectacle of collapsing high-rises, crumbling landmarks, and mushroom clouds, isn't that dreadful prospect of hollow helplessness, or that draining of meaning from the world, what really scares and fascinates us about the apocalypse?